Hey there, this is Steve Lee with Veritas Catholic Network. I pray that you and your loved ones are doing well, and I hope that Veritas has been able to help you find some peace and stay connected in this crazy time. We've been working hard to continue bringing faithful Catholic programming to you and your family. Thank you very much to those of you who have made gifts to help us keep this important work going. For everyone, we're listener supported, so I humbly ask that you please consider making a gift of your support. You can help at www.veritascatholic.com. God bless you. Also, thank you to our weekly sponsor, the Knights of Columbus Museum. Please visit the museum online at kofcmuseum.org and check out its weekly webinars. These programs are free, enjoyable, and educational. Again, kofcmuseum.org. Here we are for another week of Let Me Be Frank. I'm Steve Lee, and as always, it's my great pleasure to introduce Bishop Frank Caggiano.
Steve, we're at the beginning of summer. Another chapter in our lives is about to begin. Isn't that great?
That's right, Excellency. It's a shortened week, thanks to Monday, Memorial Day, and Memorial Day typically marks the unofficial start to summer, so I don't think this is going to be a normal summer for all of us, but, you know, things are opening up in society, and warm weather might help fight, and hopefully everyone can relax.
Well, yes, I do. I hope they can, but they need to be prudent. They need to be smart. They shouldn't relax their guard, particularly if they do, this scourge is just going to reappear in our midst. So I think this is a time for people to be a bit introspective, a bit reserved, and rest. Really rest.
Yeah.
They can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you and I talked about maybe lightening things up this week.
Yeah, chatting about summer.
Yes. Yeah. Let's start with, people love hearing stories from your growing up, Excellency. So what were summers like growing up in Brooklyn?
Well, before I answer that question, of the 4 seasons of the year, which is the one that you favor the most? Which is the one you least favor? You.
For me, I like spring. Everything's starting to warm up, and come back to life. Which do I least favor? I like them all, but I guess when I was a kid, I would have probably picked fall just because it was back to school time.
Oh, okay. Okay. See, part of growing up, summer was my least favorite time of year.
Why is that?
Because I don't like the heat.
Ah.
I do not like the heat. I much prefer the cold to the heat. So that's number one. So while it was great to be out of school, which was for all of us growing up in the neighborhood, was like the high point of the year was the last day of school, right?
Right.
But although I must confess there was mixed feelings about that too, even as a young boy, because I was taught by the Sisters of St. Dominic in St. Simon and Jude School. And while, of course, they were very tough and there was a lot of work and all the rest, they weren't fooling around. But nonetheless, there was a real sense of home. And I remember the day that we would end school, Sister would come in with all of these old Daily News editions from starting in April. And we would scotch tape newspaper around all the statues in the school. And to this day, I'm not exactly sure why, but we did. So it's like putting everybody to sleep. It was kind of like that. We washed all our desks. She put all the shades down. I mean, it was almost like going to bed. It was one of the oddest. But I would always have mixed feelings because as much as I didn't like school, I liked going to school. Isn't that strange? Like I liked being part of the class, having my friends, seeing Sister, having a routine.
Yeah. No, that all makes sense.
So half of summer was trying to figure out what to do every day.
Yes.
You had so much unstructured time. So I did not like the heat. I still don't. Now, I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in New York. So it's not just heat. It's humidity and heat.
Yes.
So you could never feel comfortable. I mean, there's only so many clothes you could take off and not be arrested. And I mean, it's just, and it was just, like there were certain days you wake up, it was 82 degrees when the day just started.
Yeah.
So those are not fond memories. The other thing growing up is my father, as everyone knows, I talk about my father a lot. I know I talk about my mother more, but my father was the other half of the equation. He's a very good man, very old-fashioned, very tough. And there were two things my father did not believe in. Actually, three things he did not believe in. Violated his inner religious sensibilities. He did not believe in dishwashers, dryers, or air conditioners. Okay. Against his religion, whatever that was, out of the question. So we had no air conditioning growing up. Now that I'm 61 years old almost, I think to myself, how did I survive? But at night, it was really, you get used to it, I suppose. So all of this is the prelude to say most of my time was spent outside.
Sure.
Right. Now, in those days, outside was different than going outside now. Because in the neighborhood, with the neighbors knowing each other, taking care of each other, having most of my friends within walking distance, really going outside was hanging out on the steps, in the backyard, on the street. So it was like a new kind of playground was formed. And there was like a rhythm to the day. Because we would usually get up, my sister and I would get up, my friends would get up, we would congregate like after breakfast and do a few things here and there, explore, mischief. Then after lunch, when it got really hot, things kind of quieted down. And I would spend time in the garage, right? Because the house in Brooklyn has a garage, but it's not big enough for a car to drive down the driveway. It's very strange arrangements, typical Brooklyn. It's a party driveway. So the garage was kind of like an outdoor living room. So we had chairs, we had sofa, there was, when I got a bit older, there was a little refrigerator out there. It really was great. And it was always in the shade, right? So I would spend some time doing that. I would read. I used to build models. Like I would put these big, huge clipper ships that would take like 3-4 weeks to glue together. One year, I forget what it was. It was like I think it was the Ark, Noah's Ark. It was like a replica of what it would look like. I remember building Iroquois longhouses out of those sticks that you have ice cream on, those ice cream sticks.
Yes.
So that was kind of like the industrious part of the day, right? And then the rest of the day, when it cooled off, we'd go out, play ball, stick ball, stoop ball. You don't know what stoop
What's
ball
that?
is, do you?
No.
Stoop ball is, almost every house in Brooklyn has steps, outdoor steps. So with a Spalding ball, you would, right, if you hit the edge of the step and caught the ball, it was 100 points. If you hit the center, like where the two steps meet, that
The
right
vertical
angle,
section.
Yep, it was 50 points. The first ball you lose, you don't catch, you lose your turn, and you would make up a number, 1,000, 1,500, whatever it is. Actually, it was a lot of fun.
What kind of ball are you? Are you not using a tennis ball for that?
No, I remember calling it a Spalding ball. It was like pink.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Now,
like one of those rubber.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it had a huge bounce to it. So if you gave it a whack, it would go flying. So it was always quite, and of course cars are coming down the street, so it was always quite taking your life in your hands, but that's all right. It is what it is. And then after dinner, there was always the ritual. My mother sat outside in her little beach chair in the driveway. And depending on what was going on, I would join her for a little bit of time. And then Jenny, who was the woman who lived next door, who was my adopted grandmother, would come out. And even though we had dinner, she'd feed us again. Cookies, cake, you name it, she made it, she brought it, we ate it. It was great. It was great. And then we'd always, not always, but most of the time I'd end the day on the stoop, or the front steps with friends, just shooting the breeze. But I call people watching, people going by. and maybe till 10 o'clock. And then it was to the sauna, which was my bedroom, to try to fall asleep till the next day. That was typical summer.
You know, so as you're talking, I imagine it like in the movies where did everybody in the neighborhood and the surrounding streets know each other, and, you know,
Yes.
other
Absolutely.
moms are calling. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. Everyone knew everyone. And yeah, and there was like a camaraderie. Not always friendship, but a camaraderie. So I would many times, like my friend Gino, who was down the block, I would have lunch at his house or dinner at his house fairly often during the summer, and vice versa. Now, we moved to the house that my family still owns when I was 10 years old. Prior to 10, when I was younger, we lived in the top apartment over what used to be Manufacturers Hanover Trust, which was taken over by Chemical, was taken over by somebody else, whatever it is now. So there was a bank on the first floor, and then we were on the top floor. And there was a fire railing, you know, a fire escape outside the windows. So in those days, it wasn't as free because it was a two-way street. That street is very big. Trucks go down it, buses go down it. So it wasn't as free. Even in those days, you had to be very careful. But in the street now, it's just one way. It's residential. It's different. So in those days, yeah, it was. And I have to tell you, I think it's for me at least, not being a parent or grandparent, but seeing how parents have to now arrange play dates and have to make appointments to have kids see each other and shit, is so different from what I remember growing up with.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about it in the past was it was spontaneous.
Yeah.
So you actually started the day not knowing what you were going to do that day, but you always found your way to doing something,
Yes.
right? Now it's much different. It's much more organized and regulated. And I think maybe you gain something by doing that, but I think you lose a lot by doing that as well.
Yeah. There's I think there's a lack of the creativity that develops from having to come up with your own stuff, and also learning how to police yourselves and referee yourselves when you have pickup games versus organized soccer games. I mean, all this stuff, my kids do all the organized stuff too. We organize everything for them, but I agree. I see exactly what you're saying.
And then, of course, summer was fireworks in Brooklyn.
Aha.
Because in Coney Island, every Friday night there would be fireworks, free fireworks. And even though we did not go down to Coney Island, because my mom and dad did not have a car. So I was the designated driver once I got my license, but that was when I was in college. So we'd have to take the subway, which, but you could still see the fireworks from our house.
Oh, wow.
So if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, it is Memorial Day weekend that is the first of those. And it ended around Labor Day. So it was the unofficial beginning and end of summer. And that was beautiful. And of course, during the summer, you'd have the 4th of July, which was always right. One of my fondest memories of the summer was the blackout. And I don't remember the year. It was in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. But I was young, and of course there were no lights. The whole place was dark. I've never seen anything like that in my life growing up. And on the block, I'll never forget, people were eating outside because you couldn't see inside.
Huh.
So they put up these card tables, and they would be eating outside their front steps. They pulled barbecues. They were grilling because, nothing worked.
Yeah.
And then, of course, being in an Italian neighborhood, everybody's afraid the food's going to spoil. Let's cook it all. Let's eat it all. It's a sin. It'll go to waste. So, like, people were cooking like the cows. It was just amazing. And then they couldn't eat anymore, so they'd share it. They'd come around. Do you want a sausage? You want this? It was just one of the most endearing memories I have of summer.
It's amazing. How long did that blackout last?
See,
remember?
now I'm getting old, so it's a little fuzzy in my mind. But if I remember, it occurred like the latter part of the afternoon,
Okay.
and then it lasted through the night. I think by the next morning, the lights were back on.
Okay.
But that was typical. You know, we used to have brownouts all the time in the city, particularly in our neck of the woods in Brooklyn. So the lights would dim, the refrigerator started groaning. And of course, we had no air conditioners. So I don't know what happened to air conditioners. But, in fact, I shouldn't tell the story, but I will, because it's actually very funny. When my father died unexpectedly. My father had what we believe was a massive stroke coming out of a dry cleaner. Actually, I sent him to the dry cleaner to take care of the clothes I had for the week, because my mother, myself, my niece had come from Pennsylvania. At that time, we had a small little country house in Pennsylvania. So it was the Friday of Easter week. So I was pastor of St. Dominic's. My mother and father lived in Simon and Jude, they were neighboring parishes. So I was maybe 13 city blocks away from the house where I grew up with to where I was pastor. I could walk there if I wanted to. So I gave the clothes to my dad. He went to walk to the dry cleaner a few blocks away. I drove to St. Dominic's. By the time I went to St. Dominic's, I had a call that my father had been taken to the hospital, which was shocking. So I picked up my mother. We went to Coney Island Hospital, and as soon as we walked in, I was pulled aside and said, "Your father didn't make it." My father was only 74 when he died.
Oh.
Anyway, so you can imagine it caused just chaos. But I thought to myself, in honor of my father, because now, please God, he is with the Lord Jesus, and all truth has been revealed. About 3 weeks after my father was buried, I took my mother to P.C. Richards, and we bought 3 air conditioners, 1 dryer, and 2 dishwashers for the upstairs and downstairs kitchens. And had them installed in honor of my father.
He's probably enjoying that from.
I'm sure he is. I'm sure he is. He's looking wherever he is. God in His mercies in heaven, looking down, saying, "Good, babe, good, figlio mio, fatto bene, good, finally."
So you said your family didn't make regular trips to Coney Island. Did you get down there with your crew of friends?
No.
Okay.
My mother was trusting, but not that trusting. No. Because Coney Island in its day, still to this day, it was a tough neighborhood. It is a tough neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay.
So, growing up, even into my 20s, there were sections of Coney Island you would not want to go to at night. A lot of drug dealing, a lot of, So, no, we did not. But a very dear friend of mine, his family, in fact, owns a restaurant in Coney Island. And when I grew older, many a night, we would go, myself or my mother or myself or whomever, we would go have dinner or just visit and watch the fireworks literally on Surf Avenue, right?
Oh, wow.
You know, it's interesting. I as I reflect on my own life, while I like people, obviously, and I like their company, I do not like huge crowds. I'm not sure why, but I really don't. I mean, I don't shy away from them, but if I had a preference, I would not go. Like Times Square, New Year's Eve. I did it once, just to say I did it. I would never do it again.
Right.
I felt so claustrophobic. I thought to myself, if I died here standing up, no one would know until like 1 o'clock when everybody left. Right? So that's what I mean. So Coney Island was crowded. Particularly fireworks night was crowded. So now, of course, this year is very different. I would always spend my weeks on vacation in Brooklyn with my family. I don't travel. I don't, because I travel the whole year to so many different places. And now, as the chair of CRS, please God, as travel resumes, I'll be going different parts of the world. So my idea of vacationing is not battling airports anymore.
Yeah.
So going to Coney Island early, let's say, for example, a Monday or Tuesday morning, when it's quiet, walk the boardwalk, that is a beautiful experience, right? No different than we have in our own diocese. We have some beautiful places,
Sure.
right? Where you could walk the beach, same idea.
Yeah. And the only thing I know about Coney Island is from the movie The Warriors and the Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
Oh yeah. No, but I couldn't imagine how somebody does that. And usually they're like, and the one fella, I forget his name. He looks like he's a gymnast, totally fit. How do you eat like 60, 50? Unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable.
It's I can't tell if it's a talent or it's a curse.
Yeah, I've been to Nathan's. Nathan's stuff is good, but it's expensive now. I mean, it's not like $1 for a Frankfurter, that's for sure. It's long gone, a hot dog. I forget how much it is, $6, $7, something like that. It's a lot of money. Yeah.
And so I guess your family then, I'm guessing you didn't travel much during the summers as a family to go visit places?
If there was travel, it was either one of two places. It was staying at home, so traveling the neighborhood, or packing up and visiting grandma and grandpa in Italy.
Okay.
Which many times we did, right? And that could be as long as the whole summer.
Wow.
Like, for example, you remember, you may not be old enough, I don't remember, but when President Nixon resigned as President of the United States, were you alive? No, you see how depressed. See, now I need therapy. Right? This is very depressing. Well, I was alive. Okay, for anybody who was interested in knowing, I was alive. And I was a teenager. And we were in Italy. And we got there, I guess it was the end of June. And we were supposed to stay till the end of August. And I said to my mother, there is no way I'm going to be here. And this happened. I mean, this is history. Who knows? They may not let us back. There could be martial law. It could be the end of the country. What do I know what was going to happen? I said, so we did go back just in time for Nixon to resign.
Huh.
But that was the exception to the rule. Most of the time we would go. My father had, as a longshoreman, he had extended vacation. So he would come for part of it. And my sister, my mother and I would go for part of it. And that's how I got to meet my grandparents.
Where in Italy were they?
My grandparents. They were in a little town called Caggiano, which is my last name, which is, if my geography is correct, it's about 20 some odd kilometers south of Salerno in the province of Campania. And it sits on this mountain, which I must tell you, I think it's 3,000 meters above sea level. Don't hold me to that. But it's high.
Wow. Yeah.
I remember visiting in February when I was studying at the Greg. Oh my God, talk about cold. Holy mother of God, have mercy. Oh my gosh. So anyway, we'll go for the summer. Many times. And between relatives, friends, people came visiting, there were always people over every night. And that's a totally different world.
Yeah.
So that world for me was time to read. Since I didn't speak the dialect my mother and father spoke very well. I still don't.
Huh.
No, I don't. My sister does. I don't. So it was hard for me to communicate. And I was very bashful and stubborn, both. So I would do a lot of smiles and pointing and waving and stuff like that to communicate. So I did a lot of reading. And that is where I fell in love with the J.R.R. Tolkien.
Aha.
And The Hobbit and The Fellowship of the Ring. Yeah, that was, and I have read it every summer since.
Okay, so let's take a break, and that will take us into our next segment. We can talk about summer reading and movies and things like that. This is fun. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll take a break. More to talk about when we come back. Catholic radio works, and now we have it here in Connecticut and New York. It's been seen around the country that there's no better tool for evangelization. Where there's Catholic radio, the folks who listen deepen their faith, families are strengthened, parishes and communities flourish. So, let people know you're listening to Veritas, tell your friends to tune in, and let's make an impact here for Jesus and His Church. This is Steve Lee for Veritas Catholic Network. Welcome back, everyone. So we're talking about summer with Bishop Frank Caggiano. We just took a trip down memory lane, talking about summers of the past. One of the things, Excellency, that summer is also associated with is books and movies. You know, people put out summer reading lists, and big blockbusters are released in the summer. So we can have a little more fun now, even. What are some of your favorite books, and maybe, you know, people can take these as recommendations for this summer?
Well, I'm not sure they'll take them as recommendations, to be honest, because I'm a bit eclectic. But just a few things to consider. I do a lot of theological reading during the year. Part of it is the USCCB work that I do with the Committee on the Catechism and Evangelization and Catechesis and all the rest. So summer for me is time to give my mind a bit of a rest.
Yes.
So I don't really do a lot of theological stuff in the summer, which is different from most other people. I very much like fiction, and I love science fiction. I always have. So if I were not a priest, if the Lord had not called me to be a priest, and I had to choose a profession, what would I have chosen? You know, I joke about wanting to have been the mayor of the city of New York, and there was a part of my life where I really did want to be a politician, which I probably need a lot of guidance and God knows what. But
it's like the opposite of being a religious person.
Correct. Yeah, correct. But there is, when politics is lived correctly, there is something noble about it. There is something very life-giving about it, particularly in a society that values the common good, where you can overcome differences by emphasizing that which we all hold in common to be necessary for life to be protected, prosperous, and to have fraternity and peace. Unfortunately, the notion of the common good in our world now is completely fragmented. So, but in those days, maybe because I was young and idealistic, anyway, but the truth of the matter is, the real profession I would have wanted to enter into was astronomy.
Oh.
I find astronomy fascinating and very life-giving to my faith, because we speak of the gifts of the Holy Spirit and we speak of wonder and awe. And growing up, I got whenever I could get my hands on things like books about the planets, particularly Mars, fascinated me as a moon. I just ate them up. And now, of course, in the world of multimedia and Netflix and everything else, and National Geographic Channel and Nat Geo Wild and BBC America and all this stuff, it's to just contemplate the beauty of the universe and the symmetry of the universe. And I mean, it speaks about God in every aspect of it, in every aspect. So I did a lot of that reading, and I still try to. I haven't lined up anything for this year because, I mean, we're kind of stuck in our homes. But so I do a lot of, believe it or not, I do a lot of television watching of those shows. There's one show, How the Universe Works, on the Science Channel. Fascinating. I mean, I could watch that for hours. It's just fascinating. And the whole idea of having multiverses versus universes, and the idea of dark energy and dark matter, and that which is, and the concept that if this Earth survives, you know, if the sun doesn't blow up, which is conceivable, every single star in existence is receding from us. So you could actually have a starless night, because every star will be outside the visible realm of the universe, which is about 13.4.8 billion light years. Because it's receding out. Imagine
How long
the
would it
depth
take for
and
that to
breadth.
happen? Yeah.
Oh, I have no idea. I'm not going to see it. I have no idea. But it could be tens of
Wow.
billions of years. If the Earth is still here, because it may not be.
Yeah.
Right? The Lord may come and say, enough with all you people. Come on, come home. So, but anyway, so go back to the book. So I had mentioned on our little break that I discovered the trilogy of The Ring
Yes.
and The Hobbit in one of those trips to Italy. I have read those 4 books every summer since. I will read them again this summer. I've seen the movies, could be possibly 6 or 7 times since they've been released, which is now almost 19 years since the first one came out. And even though The Hobbit and the trilogy of The Hobbit is not faithful to the book, which I think is unfortunate, the 3 movies of the Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King are very faithful to the book. That
Very well done.
created something in me. It sparked something in me about the power of imagination.
Yeah.
So those are the sort of things. Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes, I find him to be a fascinating figure. I think I may have told a story about reading the whole thing when I was in London as a seminarian. Ever since then, there have been great renderings on television. Jeremy Brett, I think, is the best rendition of Sherlock Holmes I have ever seen, and I think I've seen almost all of them. So the reading I do is that sort of stuff in the summer, and I do a decent amount of television watching in this realm. So I watch a lot of the Science Channel. Right. And then, of course, there was not long ago, I reread, in fact, it's here on my shelf here, I reread C.S. Lewis. A lot of C.S. Lewis's works, which I think are tremendous as well.
Yeah.
Because, again, they're imaginative. Now, on my reading list for this year, Father Joe Gill,
Oh
a
yeah.
few years ago, gave me the book Father Elijah, An Apocalypse by Michael
Yes.
O'Brien. And I've set it aside, saying I'm going to read it every summer, something else comes up. So this summer, this is on the top of the list.
That's a
to
fun read. Yep. Definitely.
And the other is a very dear friend, who's also a very generous donor, handed me a book about a year ago that I've not had the chance to read. And it is a cultural history of Russia. It's called Natasha's Dance, written by Orlando, and the gentleman's last name is Figes. I am fascinated with Russia, in Russian history and culture, as I am fascinated with Japanese history and culture. Since I
What
was
is
a
it
little
about
boy,
those 2 cultures, do you think?
exotic,
Yeah.
Eastern. There is the mystique of the emperors. They both had emperors and there's czars. It's Orthodox Christianity. There's an elegance to it. There's a colorfulness to it, and very significant. Russian history has molded a great deal of world history. So that would be less fictitious, but these are also on the list. So that's, I think, plenty to keep. And of course, then we have to run a diocese in a pandemic. I have to, where every day is an adventure. I mean, it's just.
Can I mention, you brought up Father Joseph Gill, who is a dear friend. He actually just published a book himself. I don't know if you knew. He's a fantastic storyteller, and he just published a book called The Shores of Heaven, which is about 3. He said it's the true story of 3 young martyrs in Rome, and it looks great. I'll share it on the Facebook page for Veritas for anybody who's
Okay.
who's
Okay.
interested.
No, I did not know that. No, I do. Good for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. Now, you go to movies
I do. Not anymore, but yeah, I love the movies.
Oh, you do love the movies. Okay.
I do.
What's
I
your
love
favorite
movies.
movie?
I have several. The Godfather is on the list.
Really? My mother's
yeah,
favorite
that's-
movie.
It's amazing in so many ways. Such a great story. I like westerns a lot. My family laughs because they think I should have been a cowboy. I should live on a ranch. But I love the Magnificent Seven and Shane and Clint Eastwood. And
Oh, Clint
so
Eastwood. Oh my gosh, that's so American. Wow.
how about you, Excellency?
I'm not a big movie person.
Okay.
So the last movie I went to see was, of course, it was quite the movie to see. Was there actually with Alone was with I went to see Schindler's List, which has got to be, I'm not sure how many years, 25 years, I have no idea.
At least that's yeah.
Okay, one of the most powerful films I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I saw it in Chipset Bay, so the audience was significantly Jewish.
Wow.
And so when I go to movies, and then I went, actually, is what I said, I went to see The Passion of the Christ with my mother.
Yes.
Which was, what, about 10 years ago? I mean, it all kind of fades in my mind. How
I
many
think it was
years ago
longer than that. Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, could be. Well, it had to be because Mom is gone. Mom has gone to the Lord 10 years in January. So, yeah, maybe 15, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Another powerful movie. But, like, do I go and, when I was younger, when Star Wars came out, I would go see them.
Yep.
I love Star
Yep.
Wars.
Yeah.
These last few movies, I just wait until they're on cable. Yeah.
Nothing beats
And again,
the original three.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. No, I absolutely agree. In fact, I just saw the ninth one.
How was
the
it?
conclusion. It tied a lot of stuff up. I mean, it was a little predictable. So, and that's part of when you try to run three trilogies, it's very hard to innovate. Unless you're going to have evil conquer good somehow or another. It's God forbid someone. So I think it was not a disappointment, but it was predictable in my mind.
Yeah.
But I saw it on Disney Plus.
Ah, okay.
It was just posted a couple weeks ago. So I was with my niece and her children. So we saw it. It fits and starts because the little ones don't give you a chance to watch the whole thing in peace. But I mean, we saw most of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it fits with
So-
your sci-fi.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Exactly. Exactly. I went to see, of course, the trilogy, the three movies. So those two I also saw. So actually, I've seen more movies than I realize. But I'm not. I don't go often.
Excellency, I have a couple books for you. I know you probably won't have time this summer, but maybe I'll get them for you for next summer. But have you ever read The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett?
No.
This is my single favorite novel that I've read it 3 times. It's 1,000 pages. And
Wow.
it takes place in 12th century England. And it's a story where there are several different groups of characters, and over the course of the book, all their lives intertwine. But the main thrust of the story is set in this town called Kingsbridge. And there's a main character named Tom. He's a master builder, and he's building a cathedral for a monk named Prior Philip. And they, it's just a fantastic book. The characters, you get so invested in them and the story, and it's I've recommended this to a lot of people. I've never had anybody not say that it was one of their favorites. So I'll get it for you for next summer.
Really? Thank you.
Yeah.
I look forward to it. Gosh, what will life be like next summer? I wonder.
Huh.
As we create the new normal. let's hope and pray we're back to relatively familiar surroundings. We need to pray.
Yeah. It's surreal going to the grocery store and seeing everybody in a mask and everything, and just thinking, when is this going to end, or will it? I picture. I think there'll be people who, even when things clear up and there's a vaccine and everything, that some people will be wearing masks for a long, long time still.
Yeah, and in Asia, many countries, that has become the custom.
Yeah.
Right. In part because, in particularly in Chinese cities, the pollution is at times very intrusive. So people wear it. I mean, it's funny. I was in Stop and Shop in Trumbull, and to your point, not only wearing a mask and gloves and all, but trying to remember which way to go down the aisles, because they're all marked off. They're like little arrows. There's one-way traffic.
Right.
And you just instinctively say, I need to go here. And then I looked down and said, I'm going the wrong way. So I have to go around the other way to go. Well, who would have thought? We never did that before, obviously. And that may remain. Right? That may remain.
Yeah.
To protect life, all of these sacrifices are preeminently worth doing to protect life, even if it's to protect one life.
Yes.
But human nature, given the way we are, we forget the urgency. So this summer is perilous if people take the fact that infection rates seems to be down, and thank God deaths are down, that somehow we can automatically go back to the normal way of life we used to have, because that can have really terrible consequences.
Yeah.
We can relax. Summer is to relax, but not to be caught off guard.
Yeah. It's a real difficult balance, because there are families that are really hurting because of the economy. And so Peggy Noonan had a column last Saturday, or actually it was a couple Saturdays ago, where she said, we need to reopen as quickly as we can, but we need to never forget that there are people's lives at stake, and so we need to do it in a measured and careful way.
What I doubt, because those people who are hurting now will be in a catastrophic situation if we reopen too quickly and then have to close a second time.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And the estimates, Forbes estimate, is that already 100,000 small businesses have permanently gone out of business in the United States.
Yeah.
So it really is important that we do that. So this summer, for all the talk about our summer, this summer will be new for all of us, right?
That's right.
It will be new, right? So maybe the start of new traditions for us.
Yes. Yep. And in the meantime, there's lots of time to sit and read on the back porch or in your living room.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. Or in your garage or on your stoop.
That's right.
If you have
That's
one.
right. Yeah. Okay, so let's take one more break, Excellency, and we've got some questions for when we come back from the break.
Great.
We need Catholic radio because we need the voice of the church in the public forum. We live in a time that the secular voice dominates so thoroughly that we need to get that Catholic perspective out. Just as Fulton Sheen used radio and TV in the last century, we need to continue to use. This means to announce the Catholic faith in the public forum.
Welcome back, everybody, to Let Me Be Frank with Bishop Frank Caggiano. Excellency, we've got a couple questions here, and this is an election year, and so I guess it's on people's minds because they're both related to politics. So the first one comes, they both come via email. The first one has to be anonymous, and their question was, how should Catholics react to politicians who say they're Catholic but support policies that are opposed to the teachings of the Church?
Well, I think it is a very sensitive question and a very important one. And let me just start by just simply saying this. You know a tree by its fruit, and you know a person by his or her actions and decisions. So someone can claim to be many things, but you see the authenticity of the claim by that which they endorse, that which they support, that which they decide to do. So the fact that someone claims to be Catholic, but then if, for example, they are following policies that are contrary to life, then you have to question that. Now, having said that, there is a hierarchy of truths. So certainly the right to life in the womb is of the highest importance in truth, because if you're not able to be born, then everything else is not applicable, even in secular society. So it is important that politicians be judged on their stance when it comes to abortion, without a doubt. And they need to be held accountable. And the beauty of our system is that you certainly don't vote for them if in conscience you know what they're doing is incorrect. But I also would say that you need to support life even once it is born. And there are many false choices in our society. So if people don't have an opportunity to have a roof over their heads, or to have just work, or to be educated, or to be protected, when you consider there are 17,000 people sleeping on the subways in New York City, there's something profoundly wrong there.
Yeah.
And anyone who claims to be Catholic can't stop supporting life once it's born. They also need to be held accountable, right?
Yes.
So in the end, what a person claims about himself or herself is almost irrelevant if their life does not reflect that. And I remember being at St. Francis College when Mario Cuomo, God rest his soul, as the governor of New York, gave that famous talk, all right, of trying to differentiate between, your personal conscience and your duties as a representative of a group that may not share the same faith.
Right.
Okay. And the truth of the matter is, the difficulty with that argument is a politician would have to violate his or her conscience to support some things that otherwise they would choose differently, solely because they're representing everyone's point of view. Like in the end, Thomas More did not violate his conscience, right? Because he knew his conscience was that which he would bring before God. So those politicians who are Christian, but particularly those who are Catholic, need to understand that if you're not going to follow your conscience, when you do the things you're asked to do in public life, the price that you are paying is a very large one.
Right.
When you stand before God. Right?
Yeah.
So I've heard people say, well, then can a Catholic go into public life then? Well, that's a very interesting question. The answer is yes, they can, but they have to stand up for what we believe, right? Even if the price is that you don't get elected.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Great. The second question is related. We got an email from Dominic who said, the Declaration of Independence has a sentence about laws of nature and of nature's God. These laws are not man-made. They come from God, and we're born with these laws. So Dominic wants to know, if I'm reading this correctly, how does the natural law align with laws from government, and what if there's a disconnect?
Well, that's a great question. The natural law figures very prominently in Catholic theological thinking, and particularly in moral teaching. So the best way to understand the natural law is to say that there's a basic grammar built into who we are as human beings. That our bodies, our nature, reveals to us who we are, and how we are to conduct ourselves. So that's revealed through reason. Technically, anyone who's reasonable, who reflects on it, should come up with roughly the same conclusion based on the nature of a human person. Then divine law revelation is what's revealed gratuitously by God. Okay? And natural law and divine law fit hand in glove, because that which nature cannot reveal, God reveals as Christians through his son Jesus. So we can intuit in the natural law, for example, that love fulfills human life. But divine law, divine revelation, tells us that clearly in the death and resurrection of Jesus. So it almost completes and fulfills the divine to the other. So a society, if it wants to properly function and have laws that can be obeyed without reservation, needs to go back to the natural law and say, what is it that we need to do? What are the rules we need to do to follow so that we can live healthy and, I would say, holy lives that foster community and peace? And some of the discord we're experiencing in modern society is in part because there are laws now being created that do not follow the natural law, that do not follow the grammar that makes us who we are.
Yes.
So it's not surprising that there's a lot of turmoil. So then the question is, do you have an obligation to follow it? St. Thomas said clearly, you have no obligation to follow an unjust law. But there's consequences for not following the law, which you have to be willing to bear.
Right.
And then there are laws that are unjust that we need to strive to help people not to exercise. So, for example, the United States, it's legal to have an abortion. Mm-hmm. We need to do everything we can to eliminate that law. But while we're doing that, which is going to take perhaps a long time, could we not dare to hope that we can educate and support enough people that the law would be there and no one would use it?
Right. Yeah.
Right? In their freedom, they would say, I am not doing this.
Yeah.
So that's something else to this piece, to the puzzle. So it's an excellent question. We could spend time on a future podcast talking about this, because it is where the rubber hits the road in modern society. The role of politicians, the role of law, the natural law, divine law, freedom of conscience, educating and examining one's conscience. This is where most of our difficulties are arising from in modern society.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let me just end with this, Steve.
Yes.
Forgive me. If you were to ask the average person what makes a human being human, you get some really fascinating different answers. And if you ask the average person, what is it that we all as Americans, for argument's sake, hold in common as a good, I would be curious to see what answers we get out of that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We had such a light and fun show, and the listeners made it so serious at the end.
That guy's summer. Well, we can't. Right? We never escape, right, the realities around us, right? And summer, I love in many ways, right, helps us to reflect on them.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if you're listening and you have a question for Bishop Frank, send it in to questions@veritascatholic.com. So that's it for this week, Bishop Frank. Hopefully everybody is now ready to kick off the summer.
Oh, I am. Absolutely.
All right. Let me give another nod to the Knights of Columbus Museum for sponsoring this program. They've been helping Let Me Be Frank bring solid Catholic content to you each week. So please check out kofcmuseum.org for more good content for your family. You can, as always, find Bishop Frank Caggiano on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Excellency, I'd like to ask you for your blessing, please.
In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he shine his face upon you and be merciful to you. And may the Lord in his kindness grant you his peace. And may Almighty God bless us all in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Great to see you again, Steve. See you next week.
Thanks, Excellency. See you next week.
All the best.